But for now, we've got Martin Drechsler up next. Martin has been managing director of the FSM since 2016, but he joined the organization 8 years earlier. He's responsible for legal and technical aspects of online child protection and represents the FSM in the Global Online Safety Regulators Network and in the special group on the EU Code of Conduct on age-appropriate design. He studied law in both Berlin and the Castle of Hagen. Yeah, there we go. Martin, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for the introduction. My name is Martin Drechsler. I'm the managing director of the FSM, which is a German self-regulatory organization concerned with online child safety. I'm excited to talk about the self-regulatory approach that Germany has taken in the field of age assurance for more than 20 years now. And I'd like to thank Tony Allen and the ACCS for inviting me and all of you for having chosen this session this morning. So before we dive in, I wanted to ask a quick question. How many of you remember firsthand the United States approach in the late 1990s to regulate online porn and other indecent material? So show of hands, late 1990s. Oh, okay, I see some veterans in this field. Anyway, this was a very short period of time when you needed a credit card to access porn sites. And since this was clearly a violation of free speech protection, the law was quickly struck down by the US Supreme Court, of course. So when the rest of the world seemed to celebrate the freedom of the internet, Germany did what she does best: add a layer of complexity. So while there were debates almost everywhere in the world whether the internet could or should be regulated at all, we invented the system of regulated self-regulation. In essence, this system is meant to combine the benefits of two worlds: hard law to be enforced by a public authority, and economic freedom to foster innovation by competition, but in a well-structured manner. Having its very own challenges and shortcomings, this regulatory approach has proved to be rather effective in many different child safety-related issues. The system of regulated self-regulation is based on two pillars. One is the KJM as the public authority, which oversees all service providers in the internet sphere. So access providers, content providers, and also service providers which offer technology to limit access to certain online content. The other pillar is the FSM. Our name in its long form might be unpronounceable for you, so I will stick with these three letters. Mind you, the M is for multimedia, so this may prove that we've been around for a bit. We are a private association. Companies can choose to become members of the FSM, the main benefit of which used to be what we call a legal privilege. In case of alleged infractions of online safety laws, the KJM, as the public regulator, cannot intervene directly, but must refer this case to the FSM so that we can run our own proceedings. Most issues will thus be resolved by a quick phone call or email instead of lengthy administrative proceedings. While this is a major advantage for the companies, there are strict requirements for us to be awarded the status of a publicly certified self-regulatory organization. Independence from private interference and trustworthy professionalism in our work are only two of the cornerstones. Over the last decade or so, this legal privilege for companies has taken a back seat. Today, we focus on giving advice to our members, finding a common ground, and set standards together so that companies can provide family-friendly online services and robust safety measures while being legally compliant. Our cooperation with companies from outside of Germany is also more or less the only way to bring them as close as possible to abiding by the national laws and stop them shouting country of origin principle all the time. So after the short and unsuccessful experiment with the Communications Decency Act in the United States in the late 1990s, which I referred to earlier, Germany and other countries affirmed that giving minors access to porn was a punishable act, and this was indeed the case also for the online world. But we went even further than that. Almost everywhere in the world, movies for cinema, DVD and TV have been age-rated for what feels like forever. These age ratings lead to certain restrictions depending on the age of a person. So why should this be different online? The applicable German law made no difference between television and the internet. So content providers had to prevent young people from accessing websites which were not suitable for their age. Again, different precautions were necessary depending on the age rating of a content and the age of the user respectively. While this has been the law in Germany since 2003, it only became a common concept across Europe with the latest revision of the AVMS directive in 2018. And if you've been here yesterday and listened to Ian Corby's wonderful introduction to the history of age verification, he didn't want to bother you with the name of the German law, so I'm happy to fill this gap. The law is called Jugendmedienschutzstaatsvertrag, and I think it's beautiful. So I could now argue that the topic that we are discussing this whole week is a bit of an old hat from my arrogant German perspective. Well, in fact, I won't, and it isn't. Based on our 2003 law, a sophisticated set of rules for age verification and age assurance has come about. Not only do we distinguish between two 18 ratings, one for porn and other very harmful content, the other for highly inappropriate content, which is not yet that harmful to minors. We also know specific requirements for content rated 16, 14, and 12. Now, in a time when the internet was still evolving and creating reliable age verification presented meaningful technical hurdles, a significant number of companies still ventured into this field. After all, a lot of money was to be made with adult content. Now, the law itself did not and still does not give too many details on how to provide for effective age verification or age assurance, which is good because that's why the law would not become outdated too quickly. But this is also bad because the different actors are somewhat left alone when trying to find out what would be sufficient. The German courts were no big help either, letting us know nothing more than the age verification systems needed to provide an effective barrier. This was when the KJM as the public regulator and the FSM as a self-regulatory organization began to draft guidelines to give companies an idea of what would be safe enough for the respective age ratings. We did this simultaneously and individually, since the law did not give exclusive powers to either organization and also does not demand communication or even cooperation between the two. However, we ended up by setting quite comparable standards, which have been refined over the years to reflect innovation and technology change. For example, while hard age verification used to require live and in-person contact between the person to be verified and a representative of a trustworthy organization, we later included the use of online banking credentials, the electronic ID card, or even video calls in our guidelines. Also, the question of session timeouts became a topic for debate. For how long would a successful age verification be valid when the user is inactive? Can they grab a drink from the kitchen? Can they take out the trash? Or can they go and mow their lawn and their gardens? From our perspective, this particular issue should not be set in stone, but require a decision on a case-to-case basis, depending on the nature of the service, the verification method used, and how harmful the restricted content is. In the meantime, the discussion on session timeouts has been magically converted to a discussion on reusable tokens, and let's see where this will lead us. In essence, we try not to formulate too strict or narrow standards. We would rather leave them open and flexible in order to allow for innovation. Another argument for this is that even if strict standards are revised regularly, they will only be able to follow new ideas. And why should companies use new approaches or think outside the box when the regulatory standards clearly do not allow this? Now, This brings me to how the certification process actually works. A company that develops or employs an age verification system can always go to the KJM as the public regulator and ask for their assent. A group of expert civil servants will look into the matter, demand clarification if necessary, and the KJM will eventually issue a press release that if that particular service complies with the legal requirements. The governmental service is free of charge, and this must be one of the very few official proceedings without cost in Germany at all. Companies which are a member of the FSM can pursue a different route, and especially if theirs is a fairly new or innovative concept, this approach might be preferable. Over the last couple of years, we have indeed seen these new approaches, no longer requiring personal contact, distinct databases of credit scoring companies, secret information like your online banking credentials, or special hardware. Take facial age estimation. Age verification based on this technology does not follow the classic guidelines of the public regulator. However, we found that some of these tools were indeed creating that effective barrier which the courts demand, and that these make sure minors cannot access adult content just like the law requires. Our legal position as a regulated self-regulator enables the FSM to enter in a creative and constructive dialogue with our members at a very early stage of the product development. Once they convince my team that their approach is feasible, they can ask for an in-depth assessment of their concept by the FSM's expert committee, which is a group of independent experts in the field of online child safety. The expert statement of this group and our seal of approval can then be used for marketing purposes or when the company engages in a dialogue with the public regulator. And exactly this is what happened with facial age estimation. Supported by the FSM's expert report, our members were able to convince the KJM that their approach was indeed safe enough. So, on top of our seal of approval, the company received an official thumbs up from the state. I should add that some of these companies are based in the UK, so this might prove the international relevance of our work. Now, the European Commission, when presenting the Digital Services Act, told us that the era of self-regulation was over and that it was now time for hard law instead. But is this really the case? And is this necessary and even desirable? I can agree that online safety regulations in general have recently struggled to keep up with technological and societal developments. And I agree that it was about time that bad actors be held accountable. I think we all are holding our breath to see how effective the European Digital Services Act and the British Online Safety Act will be. However, when it comes to age verification and age assurance, there can never be a one-size-fits-all. And Tony Allen rightly pointed this out in his introductory remarks yesterday. It is always very challenging to define a clear and final set of rules it's already very challenging to define a clear and final set of rules on a national level. And the example from Germany clearly shows this. In a cross-border scenario, you quickly run into individual peculiarities which make it really difficult to give the definitive answer. The availability of government-issued documents or the trustworthiness of public or private agencies will differ. Is making a payment a factor? And if so, do we require recurring payments each month? Do we distinguish between different payment methods? How strict are we in terms of the accuracy of technical measures? While Challenge 25 seems to be a quite common concept in the UK, other jurisdictions might require a different threshold. Probably even more important, it may be different from country to country how comfortable users are when being confronted with one approach or another. Are they happy to take a selfie or to use their passport? Whom do they trust when asked to make a payment? I therefore strongly advocate for defining the necessary outcomes, for example, the level of safety that is required for a certain regulatory task. This is absolutely something we should be able to achieve internationally, but we should refrain from setting in stone too many details on how this outcome is to be achieved. Even before the DSA became fully effective, the European Commission had invited 22 individuals to form a special working group with the aim of drafting a code of conduct on age-appropriate design. And I should be proud to be among one of the select few. Well, this pretty much looks like a self-regulatory endeavor to me. However, almost 1 year after the inaugural and only meeting, our mandate and timeline still remain unclear. However, how we determine a user's age might look like one of the first issues to be addressed by such a code. Also, the level of safety that is required when we protect minors from certain types of content should be a topic for discussion there. I will continue to argue that these issues be included in this European code. In the meantime, we witness a variety of regulatory initiatives across the continent and beyond. Many countries proudly present their very own new and unique approaches to age verification. And even Germany, the self-declared veteran of age verification, has new ideas. Remember our fondness for complexity? While online safety used to be a matter of state legislation exclusively, it is now being taken to the federal level, where new actors enter the scene and bring new ideas to the table. So even in one country, we might end up with two different sets of requirements issued on different levels of public regulation. I began this talk by boasting about how much experience we Germans had when it comes to age verification. For the sake of honesty and to give you the full picture, I must concede one crucial detail. While there are dozens of different age verification systems certified by either the KJM or the FSM or both, only a tiny fraction of adult content service providers is operating from within Germany. So we might have been among the first to have ambitious and determined online safety regulations, but we were also quite successful in driving the content industry we were aiming at out of the country. So this has recently changed a bit, though, with some types of online gambling and sports bets having become legal, finally. I mentioned this to underscore the value of discussing this matter on an international level. It is absolutely great that age verification and age assurance have finally become topics that we discuss in large gatherings such as ours this week. It should no longer be possible for content providers to benefit from a race to the bottom when it comes to online safety standards. The FSM are also observers to the Global Online Safety Regulators Network, and this network might become a great example of international cooperation. While the era of self-regulation may be over, at least in the eyes of the European Commission, I hope that more and more people can be convinced of the benefits of a regulated self-regulation that allows industry voices to be heard and to be considered. The next regulatory opportunity to do this will be the revision of the AVMS directive, which is just around the corner. So the example of my country has proved that this approach is feasible and efficient, and that it can encourage and support innovative solutions across the online industry internationally. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions if there are any, and if time permits. Yes, please.
Hi, thanks for the great presentation. I was wondering how the German regulations adapt with the European guidelines like EU Consent or GPGR.
Since the German regulatory framework is rather old and has not been reviewed or revised at its basis or at its really essentials, we have to adjust it on the fly, if you will. So whenever new, for example, European regulations enter the field, of course we have to apply them and we have to look as far as, or in terms of how the concepts we know or the systems we already use comply with newer European regulations. So of course we try to make it fit together, but we haven't revised the German laws to really incorporate new international approaches. But we have these in mind, of course.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Amazing presentation. I've got a question. how many different layers of age verification regulations are we soon going to have in Germany? Also factoring into the account the EU level regulations, for example, the DSA.
Yeah, well, as of now, there is one layer or one level. The struggle between who is responsible for regulating the online sphere has been going on in Germany for quite a while. So the unique layout of our country being formed of 16 individual states, which have always been responsible for television regulation. And as you know, TV is the same as the internet, of course. They are also responsible classically for online regulations. But, well, you might come to think that the internet is something that should be regulated on a broader scale. So maybe within one country, not by 16 individual entities, but on a federal level. I'm not sure if so it's not reflected in the law as it is, especially in terms of the standards for age verification or age assurance. There might be initiatives in the future, but this will be a struggle going on. And as I mentioned, we've seen a lot of initiatives across Europe or across the world that countries come up with their own ideas. I think that we will see some sort of standardization or harmonization or even, leveling between the different approaches, as most of the topics we discuss are quite comparable, and most of the peculiarities are only minor differences that may be left for the individual countries to decide, but would not have a huge impact on concepts as a whole. So at the moment, I keep my fingers crossed that we will have one concept or one layer of regulation in Germany, but you can never be sure. Of course, we are very fond for everything that makes things even more complex. So at the moment, we are sticking with the state regulation as the one level.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you.